Today I'm bringing you a brief review of a smartphone. It is not going to be a typical pros and cons breakdown. It is this one right here, the recently released Moto X70 Air. In my opinion, this phone occupies a very unique niche in the market. It is an ultra-thin phone, with decent value for money, while its launch price is somewhat high, starting at 2,499 RMB. Right now, by stacking Taobao coins, and the government subsidies, plus the 10% off coupon, if you are an 88 VIP member, you can get the 12 plus 256 GB model for around 1,500 RMB. Of course, over on Xiaohongshu, some users have managed to get the 12 plus 512 GB version for under 1,600 RMB. Those are extreme cases, of course, so we won't count those. Let's just say you can get the 12 plus 256 GB for about 1,500 RMB. At this price point, considering price anchoring, I feel that it is a rare standout product. That immediately caught my eye, because it is so different from the other Android phones recently released on the market. It is no longer trying to be an Android iPhone. To me, it is just a very purebred Android phone. Do you get what I mean? When the screen is on, you can see that in terms of proportions, it is quite slender and rectangular, without those awkward, big R angles that copy others. It still has a very authentic Android feel, a very orthodox vibe. The design is also quite impressive. Besides looking sleek and thin, its color blocking design is quite bold and vibrant, with a very Google-esque feel. The one in my hand is the green version. It features some orange accents, the accents of contrasting colors. This color blocking design looks fantastic, combined with its very clean, near-stock Android system. Once you turn it on, doesn't it have that authentic vibe? In terms of specs alone, I think it offers great value, even at the 1,500 yuan price point. Add to that its impressive build quality and its class-leading thinness in today's market. It makes me feel that it is a perfect fit for a specific type of user. We'll get into that later. But first, let's talk about what I consider to be its brilliant market niche. It's a rare find in the current smartphone market. An affordable ultra-thin and light device. To be honest, there are only about 3 models of these ultra-thin phones currently on sale. One is the Lenovo Moto X70 Air, which is just 5.99 millimeters thick. Yes, the thickness right here is 5.99 millimeters. Another is the iPhone Air, which measures 5.64 millimeters. And the third is Samsung S25 Edge, which comes in at 5.8 millimeters. They all fall into the ultra-thin and light category. I can tell you, frankly, holding this 5.99 millimeters device feels very similar to when you first pick up an iPhone Air. The sensation is nearly identical. They both feel incredibly slim and lightweight, offering an almost unbelievable feel in the hand. As for Motorola, ultra-thin design is actually part of its DNA. I'm talking about the legendary Moto Razr Blade series, from the original VC to the later X910T, and even the Moto Z later on. You could say that Moto making ultra-thin phones isn't just a sudden whim, or simply following the competition. This is truly a signature Motorola move. While those two phones, you see, the other two ultra-thin options are extremely expensive. The iPhone Air is over 8,000 yuan, and even with the recent price plunge on the Samsung S25 Edge, it still costs around 4,000 yuan. Now, this phone's entry price of 1,500 yuan significantly lowers the barrier to entry for ultra-thin devices, and while achieving this slimness, it hasn't actually compromised on much. The only slight letdown is that it uses a mid-range processor. It is powered by the Snapdragon 7 Gen 4. This processor isn't bad at all, really. It is actually quite decent. The benchmark score is around 1.4 million. I ran the tests here as well. It doesn't feature a top-tier flagship chip, but given its price point, lacking a flagship SoC is perfectly excusable. Just think of it as a mid-range device that happens to have a major advantage in slimness. That is the best way to look at it. Now, here is something quite counterintuitive. Ultra-thin phones actually need flagship processors the most. That is because flagship chips typically offer much better energy efficiency during low-power tasks. Since ultra-thin phones usually have smaller batteries, efficient chips can provide lower power consumption when running everyday applications. However, for this X70 Air, the battery integration is actually impressive. You see, the thickness is barely different from the Samsung or Apple models, but it manages to pack a 4,800 mAh battery compared to the 3,900 mAh of the S25 Edge and the iPhone Air's low 3,000 mAh range. It has done an exceptionally good job. Right. And as I mentioned, for Lenovo or Moto, crafting ultra-thin phones is their signature strength. If you look closely at the spec sheet, you'll find that the Moto X70 Air from Lenovo, while maintaining an incredibly slim profile, is still packed with features. For instance, the IP6869's dust and water resistant certification is definitely the icing on the cake. But even at this thickness, and at this price point, it still manages to include 68W wired charging and 15W correction, wireless charging, symmetrical dual speakers, and even Dolby Atmos certification. There's even a dual SIM slot. The price is very accessible, offering great value for money. Building on that, It provides a stunning ultra-thin design, giving users who crave thin phones a compelling new option, and it's a choice with a very low barrier to entry. I think it is honestly impressive, plus compared to the 8000 RMB iPhone Air, its baseline functional experience is quite solid. In some ways it is actually better than the Air. First, there is the SIM slot I just mentioned. And beyond the card slot, the dual speakers, the speaker performance on the iPhone Air can only be described as a disaster. Besides having dual speakers, it packs 3 cameras, 2 rear, 1 front, that S350 megapixel cameras. At this price point, the specs they've packed in are incredibly generous. The build quality is also excellent, with the brushed aluminum frame and the premium back panel material, along with the color design. It feels like even if it weren't an ultra-thin model, it would still dominate the 1500 RMB segment in terms of texture. Add to that its ultra-thin profile, and I think this phone is truly a standout. It is very interesting. However, I need to mention a few things that you should consider if you're thinking of buying it. Here are a few things to keep in mind if you're considering this phone. First, you shouldn't be a heavy user. If you're really into mobile gaming and things like that, the battery definitely won't hold up, and its Saki isn't quite powerful enough for competitive gaming. It would be a pretty frustrating experience for you. Another thing is the software system. It is very much a near-stock Android experience. Whether this is a plus or minus depends on the user. This next point is really subjective. It could be seen as a pro, or it could be a con. Take me, for example. I personally really like this near-stock Android system, because it is clean, ad-free, and free of cluttered notifications. As you can see, I really haven't had any spammy notifications for 2 days. Normally, with this many apps installed, apps like Taotiao would have started pushing ads already. But the drawback lies there too, according to user feedback and discussions on Coolapp. Moto's system has some issues with its push notification mechanism. WeChat works perfectly fine, but for apps like Douyin or Bilibili, you might miss private messages because notifications aren't pushed promptly. You know what I mean. Again, it depends on the person. For me, I consider this a benefit, as it filters out annoying interruptions. But for my colleagues, who use Douyin frequently and chat with friends on Xiaohongshu, this is something you definitely need to consider. So, as for this phone, this is just a quick personal review. I'm sharing it because I think this device has a pretty solid design, decent specs, and a very attractive price. It is an excellent choice when you factor in the discounts. It is arguably the only option on the market. If you want an affordable way to experience this kind of ultra-thin phone, it is your entry ticket. Especially since ultra-thin phones like this might become rarer, with models like the iPhone Air and the S25 Edge selling quite poorly. In fact, the S25 Edge has likely been discontinued. So, the market for ultra-thin phones might shrink in the future. It is really just Moto that has been consistently pushing this niche. I think this phone is actually very pleasant to use. Alright, that is it for today's video. A quick review and sharing about the Moto X70 Air. I find it to be a very interesting and solid ultra-thin phone worth picking up. Honestly, it is one of the most intriguing phones I've come across lately. I hope this content helps you with your buying decision. Until next time, see you.